They say that in the Northern Territories, where winter reigns for 9 moons of the year and the mountains rise like jagged teeth against the sky, even the wolves learn to temper their howls against the bitter wind. Perhaps that's why I learned to swallow my own cries so early. I was never meant to be a queen. Queens are powerful creatures with wolves that match their husbands in ferocity and grace. My wolf never came. My womb never quickened. I was Serena Vale, the broken daughter, the cast-aside mate, the final bargaining chip in my father's desperate gambit for peace. When Alpha King Darius accepted me as his bride, his golden eyes held nothing but contempt. A symbol, he called me. Nothing more. In his cold castle, where ancient tapestries depict wolves tearing enemies to shreds beneath blood-red moons, I became a ghost drifting through silent corridors, a crown upon my head but chains around my heart. I told myself it was enough to be safe, that warmth and belonging were luxuries not meant for women like me. But beneath my skin, something stirs when the moon rises full and crimson in the winter sky. A phantom pain, like remembering a limb long lost. And sometimes, when the king looks at me with those wolf gold eyes, I catch something beyond disdain, a flicker of recognition, as though he sees something in me that I cannot see in myself. They say the blood moon reveals truth, strips away pretense and binds what belongs together. They say it awakens ancient magic in the blood of shifters. What then will it awaken in me? Before we begin, remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Every day a new story awaits you. Now, let us begin. The scent of pine and snow clung to Serena's skin as she followed the stone-faced guard through the winding corridors of Ravenspire Castle. Winter had settled deep into the Northern Territories, but the chill in these halls had nothing to do with the season. It emanated from the very walls, from the people who walked them, from the king who ruled over them all. "Wait here," the guard commanded, stopping before massive oak doors carved with wolves in battle. Serena stood alone in the corridor, her simple blue dress a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding her. 3 days ago, she had been in her father's cottage, tending the garden and mending clothes. Now she was here, a peace offering to the most feared ruler in the 7 territories. The doors swung open, revealing the throne room beyond. Unlike the gaudy displays of southern courts, this chamber was all austere grandeur. High windows of frosted glass, stone columns reaching toward a vaulted ceiling, and at its center, a throne carved from a single piece of obsidian, polished to a mirror shine. Upon it sat Alpha King Darius. "Enter," a voice announced, though the king's lips hadn't moved. Serena stepped forward, her heart hammering against her ribs. The court watched her approach with curious, hungry eyes. These were the elite of shifter society, nobles with ancestral claims to power, warriors who had proven their worth in blood and battle. She could feel their silent judgment as she passed. She was not one of them, not anymore. When she reached the foot of the dais, Serena dropped into a deep curtsy, keeping her eyes fixed on the stone floor. "So this is what the Southern Alpha offers for peace." The king's voice was deep and cold, like water flowing beneath ice. "Look at me, girl." Slowly, Serena raised her gaze. Alpha King. Darius leaned forward on his throne, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped before him. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with features that might have been handsome if not for the perpetual cruelty etched into them. His hair was the color of burnished copper, his jaw sharp enough to cut stone. But it was his eyes that captured her, molten gold, with pupils that seemed to narrow like a wolf's, even in his human form. "Your name." It wasn't a question, but a command. "Serena Vale, Your Majesty. And you understand why you're here?" She swallowed hard. "I am to be your queen, a symbol of the alliance between North and South." A cold smile touched his lips. "A symbol, yes." He rose from his throne, descending the steps with predatory grace. Even in his human form, everything about him screamed apex predator. "But you are no shifter queen, are you?" Murmurs rippled through the court. Serena's throat tightened. "I was born to shifter parents. Yet you have no wolf," he finished, circling her slowly. "I can smell it, or rather, I can smell nothing at all. You're broken, Serena Vale, a half-creature, rejected by your own kind." Shame burned her cheeks, but she lifted her chin. "I am what the gods made me, Your Majesty." "The gods," he scoffed. "If they exist, they have a cruel sense of humor." He stopped before her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tell me, did your father explain why you, of all his daughters, were sent to me?" She hesitated, uncertain if honesty would cost her what little dignity she had left. "I'm the only one without value to keep." Something flickered in those golden eyes, perhaps surprise at her candor. "Your previous mate cast you aside for being barren," he stated, and it wasn't a question. 5 years, and not a single pup to show for it. The words cut deeper than any blade. 5 years of hoping, of monthly disappointments, of watching her husband's love curdle into resentment. 5 years of failure. "Yes, Your Majesty." Darius studied her face, searching for something she couldn't name. Then he turned away, addressing a severe-looking woman at the edge of the dais. "Lady Morrigan, see that she's properly cleaned and dressed. The ceremony will take place at moonrise." "Ceremony?" Serena couldn't stop herself from asking. "Tonight?" Darius looked back at her, his expression unreadable. "Did you expect courtship, Serena Vale? Pretty words and gentle touches?" A cruel smile touched his lips. "I need a queen, not a mate. You'll wear my mark and sit beside my throne, and the Southern Pax will honor our alliance. Nothing more." With that, he strode from the throne room, leaving her standing alone before the court. Lady Morrigan, a tall, silver-haired woman with eyes like chips of ice, gestured sharply. "Come, girl, we don't have much time." The next hours passed in a blur. Serena was stripped, scrubbed, and scented by a team of silent attendants. They dressed her in a gown of midnight blue, embroidered with silver thread that caught the light with every movement. Her hair was brushed until it shone, then arranged in an elaborate style befitting a queen. But as Serena gazed at her reflection in the mirror, she saw only a stranger wearing a costume far too grand for her. "It's not what you expected, is it?" Lady Morrigan asked, fastening a silver chain around Serena's neck. From it hung a pendant, a wolf's head with ruby eyes. "Being queen. I haven't been crowned yet," Serena replied softly. "You won't be." Morrigan adjusted the pendant. "Northern queens don't wear crowns. They wear their king's mark here." She touched the side of Serena's neck, just below her ear. "But I suspect he won't even give you that." Serena met the older woman's gaze in the mirror. "Why did he agree to this marriage if he despises what I am?" Morrigan's lips thinned. "Politics. Your father controls the southern hunting grounds. We need access to feed our growing population. And what does the South gain? Protection. The Eastern Territories have been eyeing your lands for years." She stepped back, surveying her work. "Our king may be cruel, but he honors his word. Your people will be safe under his protection." A small comfort, Serena thought, for the price being paid. The ceremony itself was brief and cold. Held in the ancient stone circle at the heart of the castle grounds, it was attended only by the highest-ranking members of court. Snow fell gently around them as Serena stood beside Darius before the high priest. There were no vows of love or devotion, only promises of alliance, of merging territories, of honoring the agreement between two alphas. When the time came for the claiming bite, the mark that would bind them together as mates, Darius merely sliced his palm with a ceremonial dagger, pressing it against Serena's own cut hand. "Blood binds us," he declared, "but nothing more." The look in his eyes as he spoke those words told Serena everything she needed to know about the life that awaited her. She was not a bride, but a trophy, a symbol of his conquest over the Southern Territories. That night, as she lay alone in the grand chambers assigned to her, far from the king's own quarters, Serena allowed herself a single moment of weakness. One tear, sliding silently down her cheek and onto the silk pillow beneath her. Just one. She wouldn't waste any more on a man who saw her as nothing but a political necessity. In the morning, she would be queen of the Northern Territories, and queens, her mother had always said, did not have the luxury of self-pity. Outside her window, the moon hung heavy in the sky, a thin sliver of silver against the velvet black. 3 weeks until it would be full, and not just any full moon, but the blood moon, when the veil between worlds grew thin, and ancient magic stirred in the blood of shifters. Even Serena, wolfless as she was, felt something stir within her at the thought. 3 weeks to find her place in this cold new world. 3 weeks to prove she was more than the broken creature Darius believed her to be. 3 weeks until everything would change. Serena's first week as Queen of the Northern Territories passed in a blur of silent meals, endless protocols, and cold shoulders. She had expected resistance from the court, but the sheer hostility emanating from every corner of the castle caught her unprepared. The morning after her wedding night, spent alone in her chambers, listening to the wind howl through the mountains, Lady Morrigan had appeared with a stack of ancient books. "The history of our people," she'd explained, dropping them unceremoniously on the writing desk. "Learn it. The court will test you at every turn." Serena had spent hours poring over the texts, absorbing the bloodied history of the Northern Pack. Their rise to power had been brutal, centuries of warfare, territorial expansion, and ruthless elimination of rivals. The Alpha Kings of old were celebrated for their cruelty as much as their strength, and Darius, it seemed, came from a long line of conquerors. Now, sitting alone in the royal library, Serena closed the final book with trembling hands. No wonder they despised weakness. These people had been forged in fire and ice, their survival dependent on culling anything they perceived as frail. And what could be weaker than a shifter who couldn't shift? A woman who couldn't bear children? You won't find what you're looking for in those pages. Serena startled, the book slipping from her fingers and falling with a heavy thud to the floor. In the doorway stood a young man, perhaps 16 or 17, with the same copper hair as Darius, though his eyes were a deep brown rather than gold. His features held the same sharp angles as the king's, but softened by youth and surprisingly a gentle humor. "Prince Lysander," Serena said, rising quickly and dropping into a curtsy. "I didn't hear you enter." The king's younger brother waved away her formality with a smile. "Please, just Lysander. Or Sander, if you're feeling particularly friendly." He crossed the room, picking up the fallen book and placing it carefully on the table. "And what you're looking for isn't in our written history." "What am I looking for?" "Understanding." He settled into the chair opposite her, stretching his long legs before him. "Why my brother is the way he is. Why our court treats you as they do. Why you're here at all." Serena studied him carefully. In her week at court, Lysander was the first person to speak to her with anything approaching warmth. "And you know the answers to these questions?" she asked. "Some of them." His smile dimmed slightly. "My brother wasn't always so cold. There was a time when Darius laughed, when he spoke of more than conquest and survival. What changed him?" Lysander's gaze drifted to the window, where snow fell in lazy spirals. "That's his story to tell, not mine. But I will say this. What happened to him? What made him the man he is today? It happened in the East. The Eastern Territories?" Serena frowned. "I thought they were our enemies." "They are now." Lysander stood abruptly, his expression clouding. "I've said too much already. I came to invite you to join me for the hunt tomorrow. The blood moon approaches, and it's tradition for the royal family to lead the preparations." "I can't shift," Serena reminded him gently. "You'll ride," Lysander countered. "The queen always joins the hunt, in whatever form she can. Besides," he added with a wink, "it will annoy my brother tremendously, and that alone is worth the effort." Despite herself, Serena smiled. "In that case, how could I refuse?" After Lysander left, Serena remained in the library, his words echoing in her mind. The East. What secrets lay in that direction? What had shaped the cold, cruel king she had married? Her contemplation was interrupted by the library door swinging open once more. This time, it was not the prince, but Lady Morrigan who entered, her silver hair gleaming in the flickering firelight. "There you are," the older woman said, disapproval etched into the lines of her face. "The king requests your presence in the great hall." Serena's heart skipped a beat. Since their wedding, Darius had scarcely acknowledged her existence, much less requested her company. "Did he say why?" she asked, rising from her chair. "It is not my place to question the Alpha King," Morrigan replied stiffly. "Nor is it yours." Chastened, Serena followed the older woman through the winding corridors of Ravenspire Castle. As they walked, she caught glimpses of daily life within these ancient walls. Servants hurrying with armloads of linens, guards standing at rigid attention, nobles conversing in hushed tones that fell silent as she passed. The great hall was alive with activity when they arrived. Long tables had been set for a feast, with servants arranging platters of roasted meats, fresh bread, and winter fruits. The high table, raised on a dais at the far end of the hall, remained empty, but the rest of the room was filling quickly with members of the court. And at the center of it all stood Darius, deep in conversation with a cluster of grim-faced men. As Serena approached, She felt the weight of his presence like a physical force. Even across the crowded room, his power radiated outward, commanding attention and respect. His head turned sharply as she neared, golden eyes finding her with unerring precision. For a moment, just a heartbeat, something flashed across his face, something almost like pain, quickly masked by the cool indifference she had come to expect. "My queen," he said, the title sounding like an afterthought on his lips. "You honor us with your presence." The formality of his greeting contrasted sharply with the dismissive glance he gave her, and Serena felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "I came as requested, Your Majesty," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. "Yes," he said, turning back to his advisors. "We are to receive an embassy from the Eastern Territories tonight. You will sit beside me and say nothing." The Eastern Territories. Lysander's words from earlier echoed in her mind. What happened to him happened in the East. "Is this wise, my king?" One of the advisors, a barrel-chested man with a gray-streaked beard, spoke up. "After what they did, politics requires uncomfortable bedfellows, Lord Kane." Darius cut him off sharply. "As my own marriage demonstrates." The barb landed precisely as intended, and Serena flinched despite her determination to remain impassive. Around them, several courtiers snickered behind their hands. "As you say, Your Majesty," Lord Kane conceded, though his expression remained troubled. Darius turned back to Serena, his gaze sweeping over her simple day dress with obvious disapproval. "Lady Morrigan will see you properly attired for tonight's feast. I expect you seated at my right hand when the Eastern delegation arrives." With that, he dismissed her, turning back to his advisors without another glance. Lady Morrigan's hand closed around Serena's elbow, steering her away from the dais. "Come," she said quietly. "We have much to do." Hours later, dressed in a gown of deep crimson that left her shoulders bare despite the winter chill, Serena sat rigidly beside her husband at the high table. The hall buzzed with tension as servants made final preparations for the Eastern Embassy's arrival. "Remember," Darius murmured, not looking at her, "you are a symbol, nothing more. Speak only if directly addressed, and then say as little as possible." "Yes, Your Majesty," Serena replied, keeping her gaze fixed on the empty plate before her. "And stop cowering," he added sharply. "You're supposed to be a queen, not a whipped pup." Before she could respond, the great doors swung open, and a hush fell over the hall. A herald stepped forward, his voice ringing clear in the sudden silence. "His Excellency, Lord Vargos Blackthorn, High Alpha of the Eastern Territories, Keeper of the Silver Woods, and Master of the Twin Rivers." The man who strode into the hall was tall and lean, with silver hair cropped close to his scalp, and eyes the color of smoke. He moved with fluid grace, his shoulders squared beneath a cloak of white wolf fur. Behind him came his entourage, a dozen men and women dressed in the silver and black of the Eastern packs. Darius rose from his seat, his posture rigid as he watched the Eastern delegation approach the high table. Serena followed suit, noting the way his hand clenched into a fist at his side. "Alpha King Darius," Lord Vargos called, stopping before the dais and offering a bow that seemed more mockery than respect. "It has been too long." "Not nearly long enough," Darius replied, his voice cold as the winter wind. "But I welcome you to Ravenspire, as honor demands." Lord Vargos's gaze shifted to Serena, his smoke-colored eyes narrowing slightly as he took her measure. "And this must be your new queen. The rumors have reached even the Eastern Mountains. A southern bride, to seal an alliance with old enemies." "Queen Serena," Darius acknowledged stiffly, not looking at her. Vargos's smile didn't reach his eyes as he bowed to her. "Your Majesty, how unexpected to find a human queen in the northern court." "I am Shifterborn, my lord," Serena replied, the words emerging before she could stop them. Beside her, she felt Darius stiffen. "Though the wolf sleeps within me, does it sleep?" Vargos asked, his head tilting like a curious predator. Or was it never there at all? A murmur rippled through the court. Serena felt heat rise to her cheeks but held her ground. "The gods have their reasons for all things, Lord Vargos, even those we cannot understand." For a moment, the Eastern Alpha studied her, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, a sound like gravel underfoot. "Well spoken, Queen Serena. Perhaps there is more to you than meets the eye." Darius cleared his throat, drawing attention back to himself. "You've traveled far, Lord Vargos. No doubt you and your people are weary. Let us feast, and speak of business on the morrow." The meal that followed was tense, with conversation flowing like honey in winter, slow and strained. Serena picked at her food, acutely aware of Vargos's occasional glances in her direction. Beside her, Darius ate little and drank less, his attention focused on the Eastern delegation with predatory intensity. When the plates had been cleared and the minstrels began to play, Lord Vargos leaned across the table, his voice pitched low enough that only Darius and Serena could hear. "I must admit, Darius, you surprised me with this match. After Alara, I thought—" Darius's hand slammed down on the table, silencing the hall instantly. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "Do not speak that name in my presence." Vargos held up his hands in a placating gesture, though his eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. "Forgive me. Old wounds, best left undisturbed." The tension was broken by the arrival of Lysander, who slid into the empty seat beside Serena with the easy grace of youth. "Lord Vargos," he greeted the Eastern Alpha with a nod. "Still dressing like a snowbank, I see." Vargos's lips twitched, though whether in amusement or annoyance was hard to tell. "Young prince, I see you've not yet learned the value of respect." "I've learned it's best reserved for those who deserve it," Lysander replied cheerfully, reaching for a goblet of wine. Before Vargos could respond, Darius rose from his seat, drawing all eyes to him. "The hour grows late," he announced, his voice carrying across the hall. "And tomorrow brings the hunt. Rest well, Lord Vargos. We ride at dawn." With that, he strode from the dais without a backward glance, leaving Serena to navigate the awkward moment of his departure. She rose more slowly, inclining her head toward the Eastern delegation. "Until tomorrow, my lords," she said, striving for the dignity she'd been told a queen should possess. As she turned to follow her husband, she caught Vargos watching her, his smoke-colored eyes calculating. The look sent a chill down her spine that had nothing to do with the winter air. Back in her chambers, Serena paced before the fire, her mind churning with questions. Who was Alara? What had happened between Darius and the Eastern Pack? And why, despite the obvious animosity, was the king hosting their delegation now? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. When she called for the visitor to enter, she was surprised to find not a servant, but Lysander standing in the doorway, a troubled expression on his young face. "I thought you might have questions," he said without preamble. "After tonight's entertainment." Serena gestured for him to enter, grateful for the company and the potential answers he might provide. "Your brother was less than pleased with Lord Vargos's mention of someone named Alara." Lysander sighed, dropping into a chair by the fire. Alara was his mate, his true mate. They were bonded when he was 19, and she barely 17. A political match like yours, though between East and North rather than South. "What happened to her?" Serena asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "She died," Lysander said simply, "during an uprising in the Eastern Territories. Lord Vargos's brother led a faction against the Alliance, and Alara was caught in the crossfire." "That's terrible," Serena murmured, her heart aching despite herself for the man who had shown her nothing but disdain. "How long ago?" 8 years. Lysander stared into the fire, shadows dancing across his face. "Darius was never the same after. He led our forces east, slaughtered the rebels, and nearly wiped out Vargos's entire bloodline before the other territories intervened. The peace we've had since has been fragile, at best. Then why invite them here now? Why risk reopening old wounds?" Lysander's expression darkened. "Because something worse than old wounds threatens our borders. Raiders from beyond the Frost Mountains have been attacking villages in the east. Vargos believes they'll come for us next. And Darius? My brother believes in preparing for war, even while hoping for peace." He rose from the chair, moving toward the door. "You should rest, Queen Serena. The hunt tomorrow will be challenging." After he left, Serena stood at her window, gazing out at the moonlit landscape. Snow blanketed the mountains, peaceful and pristine in the silver light. It was hard to imagine violence touching such beauty, yet the history she'd read and the stories she'd heard spoke of blood soaking these same peaks for generations. And somewhere in this castle slept a man whose heart had been shattered by loss and hardened by revenge, a man who now found himself bound to her, a poor substitute for the mate he had loved and lost. No wonder he couldn't bear to look at her. Morning came too quickly, with servants bustling into her chambers before dawn to prepare her for the hunt. They dressed her in riding clothes of dark green leather, lined with fur for warmth, and braided her hair close to her scalp. The outfit was practical, designed for long hours on horseback, yet still marked her as royal, with subtle silver embroidery at the collar and cuffs. "The hunt is more than sport for our people," Lady Morrigan explained as she fastened a silver brooch shaped like a wolf's head to Serena's cloak. "It is ritual, preparation for the blood moon feast. The meat taken today will feed those who cannot hunt for themselves, the elderly, the children, the injured." "I understand," Serena said, pulling on supple leather gloves. "We have similar traditions in the South, though our hunts are smaller." Morrigan's lips thinned. "Everything in the South is smaller. Your territories, your packs, your ambitions." Before Serena could respond to the barb, a horn sounded in the distance, the call to assemble. The castle courtyard was alive with activity when she arrived. Horses stamped and snorted, their breath forming clouds in the cold morning air. Shifters in human form checked weapons and supplies, while others had already transformed, their massive wolf forms pacing impatiently around the perimeter. Darius stood at the center of it all, resplendent in hunting leathers of deep blue that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his frame. His hair was pulled back from his face, secured at the nape of his neck, revealing the sharp angles of his jaw and cheekbones. For a moment, watching him direct his people with easy authority, Serena could almost see the man he might have been before loss had hardened him. Confident, respected, perhaps even kind. Then his golden eyes found hers, and the illusion shattered. His expression closed off, becoming the mask of indifference she had come to expect. "Queen Serena," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "Your mount is ready." She followed his gesture to where a groom held the reins of a dappled gray mare. The horse was beautiful, with intelligent eyes and strong legs built for the mountain terrain. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she said, approaching the mare and stroking her velvet nose. "She's lovely. She's sure-footed," Darius corrected, as if beauty were irrelevant. "You'll need that in the mountains." Before she could reply, Lord Vargos approached, already mounted on a massive black stallion. "Queen Serena," he greeted her with that same mocking smile. "You ride with us today? How unconventional." "The Queen honors our traditions as best she can," Darius replied before she could speak, his tone sharp, "as all who wish to call themselves part of the Northern Pack must do." Vargos's smile widened. "Of course, though I wonder," his gaze flicked to Serena, then back to Darius, what other traditions she might honor in her limited capacity. Serena felt the blood drain from her face as his meaning became clear. He was questioning her ability to bear children, to continue the royal bloodline, the most fundamental duty of a queen, and the one she had already failed at once before. To her surprise, it was Lysander who stepped forward, his young face tight with anger. "Mind your tongue, Lord Vargos, or you may find yourself missing it. Queen Serena rides with the royal family today, at my invitation." Vargos raised an eyebrow, but inclined his head in acknowledgement. "No offense intended, young prince, merely an observation." "Then observe in silence," Darius said coldly, turning away from the Eastern Alpha. "We ride." The hunting party moved out in formation, with Darius at the lead and Serena, Lysander, and Vargos following closely behind. The rest of the court spread out around them, some on horseback, others in wolf form, racing through the snow with obvious joy. As they rode through the castle gates and into the forest beyond, Serena couldn't help but be awed by the wild beauty surrounding them. Ancient pines towered overhead, their branches heavy with snow. The morning light filtered through, casting dappled patterns across the forest floor. In the distance, mountains rose like jagged teeth against the pale sky. "It's beautiful," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. "You sound surprised," Lysander commented, guiding his horse alongside hers. "Did you expect our lands to be as cold and unwelcoming as our people?" Serena flushed. "I didn't mean—" "I know," he grinned. "I'm teasing. The North has its harshness, but also its beauty, like its king." She glanced ahead to where Darius rode, his back straight, his attention fixed on the path before them. "I've yet to see evidence of the latter." "You will," Lysander said with surprising certainty, "when it matters most." The hunt progressed deeper into the forest, with scouts in wolf form ranging ahead to track prey. By midday, they had taken 3 deer and a massive elk, the meat carefully dressed and packed for the return journey. Serena had watched in silent fascination as the shifters worked together with the efficiency of a pack that had hunted these lands for generations. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Darius called for a rest beside a frozen stream. The horses were watered and tended to, while the hunters gathered in small groups to eat and warm themselves by hastily built fires. Serena found herself standing apart, unsure where she belonged in this hierarchy. The court ladies who had been civil enough in the castle now turned their backs when she approached, while the male hunters watched her with undisguised curiosity or disdain. "It never gets easier," a quiet voice said beside her. Serena turned to find a woman perhaps a few years older than herself, with dark skin and eyes the color of amber. She wore the simple leather jerkin of a huntress, though the quality of the craftsmanship marked her as someone of rank. "Being an outsider," the woman clarified, offering a sympathetic smile. "Even after years, they find ways to remind you that you weren't born to their pack." "You're not Northern?" Serena asked, grateful for the conversation. "Western, originally. I came east with my mate 5 years ago." She extended a hand. "Kira, captain of the Queen's Guard, or I will be, once you appoint one." Serena blinked in surprise. "I didn't realize I had the authority to appoint anyone." Kira's smile widened. "There's much about your position you don't yet understand, Your Majesty. The Northern Court runs on traditions older than the castle itself. One of those traditions is that the Queen commands her own guard, separate from the King's forces. Why? To protect her from threats both outside the pack and within it." Kira's gaze flickered meaningfully toward where several noble ladies sat, their heads bent close together as they cast occasional glances in Serena's direction. "I see," Serena murmured, though in truth, she was only beginning to understand the complex web of politics she had been thrust into. "And you're offering to serve as my captain? If you'll have me." Kira's expression turned serious. "You need allies in the north, Your Majesty, especially now, with the Eastern delegation watching for weaknesses." Before Serena could respond, a commotion erupted at the edge of the clearing. Hunters were gathering, pointing and calling to others. Kira straightened, her posture shifting from friendly to alert in an instant. "Stay here," she instructed, moving toward the disturbance with the confident stride of a trained warrior. But Serena had spent enough time being told where to go and what to do. She followed, pushing through the growing crowd until she could see what had captured their attention. A massive gray wolf lay on its side in the snow, blood matting its fur. Its breathing was labored, each exhale sending a puff of steam into the cold air. Around it stood several hunters, their expressions grim. "What happened?" she asked the nearest person. "Trap," a grizzled hunter replied without looking at her. "Eastern make, by the design." Serena's gaze flew to Lord Vargos, who stood at the edge of the gathering, his face carefully blank. "I assure you," he said smoothly, "my people set no traps in Northern territory." "Then how do you explain this, Blaine?" Darius's voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd as he strode forward, kneeling beside the injured wolf. His hands moved with surprising gentleness over the creature's flank, assessing the damage. "Raiders," Vargos suggested, though his tone lacked conviction. "The same ones I came to warn you about." Darius's golden eyes narrowed. "Convenient." The wounded wolf whimpered, its body convulsing slightly as pain rippled through it. Without thinking, Serena stepped forward, kneeling in the snow beside her husband. "May I?" she asked quietly. Darius looked at her in surprise, but moved aside slightly, allowing her access to the injured animal. Serena examined the wound carefully, a deep gash where the trap's teeth had torn through muscle and sinew. "I need clean cloths, water, and my satchel," she said, her voice taking on a tone of authority that surprised even her. "It's in my saddlebag." For a moment no one moved. Then Kira stepped forward. "I'll fetch it, Your Majesty." As the huntress hurried away, Serena turned back to the wolf, running her hands gently over its trembling form. "Shh," she murmured. "You're going to be all right. I promise." The wolf's eyes, a deep, rich brown, met hers, and something passed between them. Understanding. Trust. The creature stilled beneath her touch, its breathing becoming more regular. Kira returned with the requested items, and Serena set to work. She had been a healer in her village before being sent north, though she had rarely treated wounds this severe. Still, the principles were the same. Clean the injury, stop the bleeding, prevent infection. As she worked, she became aware of the silence around her. The entire hunting party had gathered to watch, their expressions ranging from skepticism to grudging respect. Darius remained beside her, his presence both intimidating and oddly comforting as she cleaned and bound the wolf's wound. "There," she said at last, sitting back on her heels. "The bleeding has stopped, but they'll need rest and careful monitoring. We should return to the castle." "We?" Darius repeated, his voice carefully neutral. "Unless you'd prefer to leave one of your people here to die of exposure," Serena replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Something flickered in those golden eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or a reluctant admiration. Then he nodded, rising to his feet and issuing commands to prepare for the journey back. As the hunters dispersed to gather their things, Vargos approached, his smoke-colored eyes fixed on Serena with new interest. "Impressive," he said, "for someone without a wolf of her own." "One doesn't need to shift to understand suffering," she replied, rising to her feet. Snow clung to her knees, melting into the leather of her breeches, or to alleviate it. Vargos smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Indeed, a useful skill in these troubled times. He glanced at Darius, who stood a short distance away, watching their exchange with thinly veiled hostility. "You've chosen a remarkable queen, Darius, perhaps wiser than you knew." With that enigmatic comment, he turned and walked away, leaving Serena with the uncomfortable feeling that she had revealed more than she intended to the Eastern Alpha. The journey back to Ravenspire Castle was slower, with the injured wolf carried on a makeshift litter between two horses. Serena rode beside it, watching for signs of distress and occasionally stopping to check the bandages. By the time they reached the castle gates, darkness had fallen, and torches blazed along the battlements to guide them home. In the courtyard, as servants hurried forward to take the horses and help with the injured, Darius approached her. He had been distant throughout the return journey, his attention focused on the surrounding forest as if expecting an attack at any moment. "The wolf will be taken to the healer's quarters," he said, his voice gruff. "You should rest." "I'd like to stay with them," Serena replied, "at least until I'm certain the wound won't reopen." Darius studied her face, his expression unreadable in the torchlight. "As you wish. But first, join me in my study. There are matters we must discuss." The request, or rather command, surprised her. Since their wedding, Darius had shown no interest in speaking with her privately. What had changed? The king's study was a surprisingly austere room, with shelves of books lining the walls and a massive desk of polished oak dominating the center. A fire blazed in the hearth, casting warm light over the space and driving back the winter chill. Darius gestured for her to sit in one of the chairs before the fire, then poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He handed one to her before settling into the opposite chair, his long legs stretched toward the flames. For a long moment, he said nothing, simply staring into the fire as if searching for words in the dancing flames. Serena waited, the glass cool against her palm, her pulse quickening with anticipation or anxiety. She wasn't sure which. "You surprised me today," he said finally, his voice low. "With the wolf. I was a healer in my village," she explained. Before you were traded to me like a prized mare," he finished for her, a bitter edge to his words. Serena flinched. "Yes." Darius took a long drink from his glass, then set it aside on a small table between them. "Lord Vargos leaves tomorrow," he said, changing the subject abruptly. "His delegation will return to the east, supposedly to fortify their borders against these raiders." "You don't believe him," Serena observed. "I believe Vargos would say anything, do anything to achieve his aims." Darius's eyes reflected the firelight, turning them from gold to flame. "He wants something from us, and it isn't an alliance against phantom raiders." "What then?" "That," Darius said, leaning forward slightly, "is what I need you to discover." Serena blinked in surprise. "Me? How could I possibly—" "He's watching you," Darius interrupted. "He has been since he arrived. Something about you interests him, and I need to know what it is." The request felt like a test, though of what, Serena couldn't say. Loyalty, perhaps, or usefulness to a man who had made it clear he considered her neither mate nor queen in any true sense. "What would you have me do?" she asked carefully. "Speak with him, before he leaves. See what you can learn." Darius's gaze was intense, searching her face for something. Hesitation? Deceit? "Can you do that for me, Serena?" It was the first time he had used her name without her title, and the sound of it on his lips sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "Yes," she said simply. "I can do that." Darius held her gaze a moment longer, then nodded, rising to his feet. Good. Now go. Tend to your patient. We'll speak again tomorrow. As Serena made her way to the healer's quarters, her mind whirled with questions. What did Vargos want? Why did Darius suddenly trust her enough to involve her in his suspicions? And why did the simple sound of her name in his voice make her heart race like a startled deer? The wounded wolf had been placed on a pallet in a warm corner of the healer's chamber. Its breathing was steady now, though its eyes followed Serena as she entered. "How is our patient?" she asked the elderly healer, a stooped man with kind eyes and gentle hands. "Better, thanks to your quick work," he replied, gathering his supplies. The wound was clean and well bandaged. "I've given a tincture for pain, but otherwise, there's little more to do but wait." Serena nodded, settling onto a stool beside the pallet. "I'll stay with them for a while, if that's all right." The old man smiled. "Of course, Your Majesty. Call if you need anything." After he left, Serena reached out to stroke the wolf's thick fur. The animal watched her with those intelligent brown eyes, its tail thumping weakly against the pallet in greeting. "You gave us quite a scare," she murmured. "But you'll be all right now, I promise." As she sat in the quiet chamber, the events of the day washed over her. The hunt, the injury, Darius's unexpected request. It was the most she had felt like a true queen since arriving in the north, and the realization brought a small smile to her lips. Perhaps there was a place for her here after all. Not as a mate. Darius had made his feelings on that matter painfully clear, but as a queen in her own right. Someone who could serve these people, protect them, earn their respect if not their love. Outside, the moon rose higher in the night sky, its silver light streaming through the narrow window. In 2 weeks' time, it would reach its fullest point, the blood moon, when magic stirred in the blood of shifters and ancient powers awakened from their slumber. Serena felt a strange anticipation at the thought, a stirring deep within her that she couldn't explain, as if something long dormant was beginning to wake, called by the approaching moon and the wild energy of this harsh, beautiful land. The wolf whimpered softly, drawing her attention back to the present. Its brown eyes met hers, filled with a wisdom that transcended species. For a moment, Serena had the uncanny feeling that the creature understood her better than she understood herself. "Rest now," she whispered, stroking its head gently. "Tomorrow brings new challenges for us both." Little did she know just how true those words would prove to be. The blood moon hung like a crimson eye in the night sky, casting an eerie glow across the snow-covered landscape surrounding Ravenspire Castle. From her window, Serena watched its slow ascent, a shiver of anticipation, or perhaps fear, tracing its way down her spine. 2 weeks had passed since the hunting incident, 2 weeks of subtle changes that had transformed her position at court. Her care for the injured wolf had earned her grudging respect among the hunters. The wolf had recovered swiftly under her attention, returning to its pack with only a slight limp to show for its ordeal, but it was her conversation with Lord Vargos before his departure that had truly altered her standing. "Walk with me, Queen Serena," he had requested the morning after the hunt, his smoke-colored eyes calculating as ever. Before my journey home, they had strolled through the castle's inner courtyard, snow crunching beneath their boots. For several minutes, Vargos had spoken of inconsequential matters: the weather, the quality of northern craftsmanship, the strength of the castle walls. Then, abruptly, he had changed course. "You are not what I expected," he'd said, studying her with that predatory gaze. "A southern bride with no wolf and no noble lineage, yet here you stand, a queen of the north. By marriage only," Serena had replied carefully, recalling Darius's request to discover the Eastern Alpha's true motives. "As you well know." "Ah, but is it only marriage that makes a queen?" Vargos had stopped beside a frozen fountain, its icy contours glittering in the winter sunlight. "Or is it something more intrinsic?" "What do you mean?" "I mean," he'd said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a whisper, "that power reveals itself in unexpected ways, particularly under the blood moon." A chill had run through her at his words, a premonition of something momentous approaching. "You speak in riddles, Lord Vargos." "Do I?" His smile had been sharp as a blade. "Consider this, Queen Serena. Why would Darius, who despises weakness above all else, accept a bride without a wolf? Why would your father, who surely loves his daughter, send you to a man known for his cruelty?" "Politics," she'd answered. repeating what Lady Morrigan had told her. An alliance between territories. Vargos had laughed, the sound like ice cracking. Politics is the convenient explanation. The truth lies deeper. He'd stepped back, his expression turning serious. Watch yourself when the blood moon rises, Queen Serena. Your husband may discover he has married more than he bargained for. With those cryptic words, he had bowed and taken his leave, returning east with his delegation. Now, as the blood moon rose higher, Serena pondered his warning. What had he meant? What could possibly change under this crimson moon that would affect her marriage to Darius? A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. When she called for the visitor to enter, she was surprised to find not a servant but Kira, the huntress who had since become captain of her personal guard. Your Majesty, Kira said, her amber eyes serious. The king requests your presence in the throne room. The blood moon ceremony is about to begin. Serena's heart quickened. Since her conversation with Vargos, Darius had been different. Not warm exactly, but less distant. He had consulted her on matters of court, included her in council meetings, even, on rare occasions, sought her opinion on decisions affecting the kingdom, but he had still not claimed her as his true mate. I'll come at once, Serena said, adjusting the silver pendant that hung at her throat, the wolf's head with ruby eyes, a symbol of her position, if not her nature. Kira hesitated, then stepped further into the room, closing the door behind her. Your Majesty, there is something you should know before you join the ceremony. Serena frowned at the huntress's serious tone. What is it? The blood moon ritual is ancient, older than Ravenspire itself. It calls to the wolf within all shifters, awakening primal instincts that are usually held in check. Kira's expression was grave. For mated pairs, it can be intense. The bond between them strengthens, sometimes painfully so. But Darius and I aren't truly mated, Serena pointed out. He has never given me his mark. No, Kira agreed. But you are bound by the ceremony that made you his queen. That may be enough for the moon's magic to affect you both. A flutter of something, anticipation, anxiety, stirred in Serena's chest. What should I expect? Kira shook her head. I cannot say, Your Majesty. Each person's experience is unique, but be prepared for strong emotions, heightened senses, perhaps even, she hesitated, searching for the right word, revelations. With that enigmatic warning, Kira escorted Serena through the winding corridors of the castle. As they approached the throne room, Serena became aware of a strange sensation building within her, a warmth that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat, growing stronger with each step. The massive doors swung open, revealing a scene unlike any Serena had witnessed before. The throne room had been transformed. Hundreds of candles cast a golden glow over the assembled court, their light mingling with the crimson radiance that streamed through the high windows. The air was heavy with the scent of pine, smoke, and something wild and untamed that made Serena's skin tingle. At the center of the room stood Darius, resplendent in ceremonial attire of deep blue and silver. His copper hair gleamed in the candlelight, loose around his shoulders rather than pulled back as usual, but it was his eyes that captured Serena's attention. Burning gold, more wolf than human, fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. As she stepped into the room, a hush fell over the assembled court. Serena felt their eyes upon her, watching, waiting, judging. She lifted her chin, refusing to be cowed by their scrutiny. Darius extended his hand, beckoning her forward. My queen, he said, his voice deeper than usual, resonating through the chamber. Join me. Serena moved toward him, the strange warmth within her growing with each step. When she placed her hand in his, a jolt of energy passed between them, so powerful that she gasped aloud. Darius's fingers tightened around hers, his eyes widening slightly, as if he too had felt the connection. The blood moon rises, he addressed the court, though his gaze remained fixed on Serena, as it has for 1,000 years, calling to the wolf within each of us, reminding us of the beast that shares our soul. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Many of the courtiers looked different tonight, their postures more fluid, their eyes reflecting the candlelight with an animal glow, their movements possessing a predatory grace that was both beautiful and unsettling. Tonight, Darius continued, we honor the ancient pact between wolf and human, beast and intellect. Tonight, we remember who we truly are. He raised a chalice that Serena hadn't noticed before. A massive cup of hammered silver, its sides etched with running wolves. Within it, a dark liquid caught the light, gleaming crimson like the moon above. "Drink," he said, offering her the chalice. "And remember." Serena hesitated, recalling Kira's warning about revelations. Whatever was in that cup, it was clearly part of a ritual she did not fully understand. Yet something compelled her forward, curiosity perhaps, or a deeper instinct she couldn't name. She accepted the chalice, its weight substantial in her hands. The liquid within smelled of wine and herbs, with an undertone of something metallic that made her pulse quicken. Meeting Darius's golden gaze, she lifted the cup to her lips and drank. The taste exploded across her tongue, rich, complex, alive with flavors she couldn't identify. As she swallowed, the warmth within her flared into heat, racing through her veins like liquid fire. She gasped, nearly dropping the chalice as sensations overwhelmed her. Sounds suddenly louder, scents sharper, colors more vivid. Darius took the cup from her trembling hands, his fingers brushing hers with deliberate gentleness. He drank deeply, his throat working as he swallowed, then passed the chalice to Lysander, who stood nearby. "Come," Darius said, his voice low enough that only Serena could hear. "There is more to this night than ceremony." He led her through a side door and into a corridor Serena had never seen before. Unlike the grand hallways of the castle, this passage was narrow and winding, with rough stone walls that spoke of great age. Torches flickered in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows as they descended a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever. "Where are we going?" Serena asked, her voice sounding strange to her own ears, as if coming from very far away. "To the heart of Ravenspire," Darius replied without looking back. "To the place where it all began." Finally, they reached the bottom of the staircase. Before them stretched a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows, its walls glittering with veins of silver ore that caught and reflected the light of dozens of braziers. At the center of the chamber stood a circle of standing stones, ancient and weathered, their surfaces carved with symbols Serena didn't recognize. And in the middle of the circle lay a pool of still water, black as night, reflecting the image of the blood moon above through some opening in the cavern ceiling that Serena couldn't see. "What is this place?" she whispered, the weight of ages pressing down upon her. "The first den," Darius answered, his voice reverent, "where our ancestors first made the pact with the wolf spirits, thousands of years ago. It is here that the first shifter was born, when human and wolf became one." He guided her to the edge of the stone circle, his hand warm and solid against the small of her back. "Only the royal family knows of this place. Only those of the bloodline may enter the circle on the night of the blood moon." "Then I shouldn't," Serena began, but Darius shook his head. "You are my queen," he said, and for once, the title didn't sound like an afterthought on his lips. "Bound to me by blood and oath, you have the right." Together, they stepped over the threshold of the stone circle. Immediately, the heat in Serena's blood intensified, becoming almost unbearable. She swayed on her feet, and Darius's arm came around her waist, steadying her. "It will pass," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "The first wave is always the strongest." He led her to the edge of the black pool, where the reflection of the blood moon rippled gently, though the water itself was perfectly still. As Serena gazed into its depths, she felt a strange vertigo, as if she might fall forward into that crimson light and keep falling forever. "Look," Darius instructed, his voice now coming from very far away. "Look and remember." Serena looked. At first, she saw only the moon's reflection, a perfect circle of blood red against the black. Then the surface of the pool began to change, rippling outward from the center, though no wind disturbed the air in the cavern. Images formed in the dark water, shadowy at first, then growing clearer. A forest she didn't recognize, a clearing bathed in moonlight, and in the center of the clearing, a woman with Serena's face but wilder, fiercer, her eyes glowing with an inner light. The woman threw back her head and howled, the sound echoing through the cavern, though the pool itself remained silent. Then her body began to change, limbs elongating, fur sprouting from skin, features shifting from human to wolf in a transformation that was both terrible and beautiful to behold. "No," Serena whispered, shaking her head in denial. "That's not possible. I can't shift. I have no wolf." "Look again," Darius urged, his hands on her shoulders, warm and steady. The vision in the pool shifted. The forest faded, replaced by a different scene, a stone chamber much like the one they stood in now. In it, a woman in white performed a ritual over a sleeping child. As the woman's lips moved in silent incantation, a ghostly form seemed to rise from the child's body, the translucent shape of a young wolf, struggling against invisible bonds. With a gesture of her hand, the woman in white imprisoned the wolf spirit in a crystal vial, which she then sealed with wax and blood. "What am I seeing?" Serena asked, her voice trembling. "Your past," Darius answered, his grip on her shoulders tightening. "Your true nature, hidden from you since childhood." The pool's surface rippled again, and a new scene formed, a familiar one that made Serena's heart clench with grief. A small boat on a stormy sea, a woman with sad eyes, holding a child close. Serena recognized her mother, recognized herself as the frightened girl clutching her mother's hand. "Don't be afraid," her mother said in the vision, though no sound came from the pool. Serena knew the words from memory, had heard them in her dreams 1,000 times. Then the scene shifted, showing what happened next, what Serena had never been able to remember through the haze of trauma and grief. Her mother, pulling something from around her neck, a crystal vial on a silver chain, the same vial from the earlier vision. "It's time," her mother said, pressing the vial into young Serena's hand. "Take it. When the time comes, when you're ready, break it. Release what was taken from you." Before the child could respond, a massive wave crashed over the boat, sweeping her mother into the churning sea. "No!" Serena cried out, reaching toward the pool as if she could change what had happened, save her mother from the depths that had claimed her. The vision disappeared, the pool returning to its original state, black and still, reflecting only the blood moon above. Serena turned to Darius, tears streaming down her face. "What was that? What does it mean?" His golden eyes held a mixture of emotions she couldn't decipher. Pain, regret, hope. "It means you are not what you believe yourself to be. You were born a shifter, Serena Vale. Your wolf was bound, locked away by magic when you were too young to remember. But why? Who would do such a thing?" "Your mother," Darius said gently. "To protect you. From what? From those who would use you for your power." His hands moved from her shoulders to cradle her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. "The Southern Territories have their own prophecies, their own legends. One speaks of a white wolf born with the power to unite all packs under a single banner, a wolf so powerful that kingdoms would fall before it." Serena shook her head in disbelief. "And they thought that was me? A child?" "They saw the signs," Darius explained. "Your mother most of all. The white fur that began to appear when you first shifted as a toddler. The unusual strength of your wolf, even so young. She bound your power to protect you from those who would seek to control it, or destroy it." "How do you know all this?" Serena asked, stepping back from his touch. "How could you possibly know what happened when I don't even remember it myself?" A shadow passed over Darius's face. "Because the Eastern Packs have their own prophecies, their own fears. When word reached us of a white wolf cub born in the South, one who might someday challenge the old order of territories and bloodlines, they sent an emissary to investigate." "Alara," Serena breathed, remembering the name that had provoked such a violent reaction from Darius at the feast. "Yes," he confirmed, pain flashing in his golden eyes. "My first mate. She was sent to the South as a child, to live among your people as one of them, to watch for signs of the white wolf's return. She befriended my mother," Serena guessed, the pieces clicking into place, "learned of the binding ritual, and fell in love with your father," Darius added, surprising her. "Truly loved him, from what she told me later. When she was called back to the East to report what she had learned, she was heartbroken to leave him." "My father's first wife," Serena whispered, remembering the woman who had raised her in her early years, who had died when Serena was 5, supposedly in a hunting accident. "Alara was my stepmother," Darius nodded. "She returned east, made her report to the council, and was promised to me as part of an alliance between our territories. But she never forgot your father, or the child she had helped to raise." "What happened to her?" Serena asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "When she learned that Eastern assassins had been sent to find and kill the white wolf, to kill you, she betrayed her own people. She sent a warning to your father, told him to flee with you to a new territory where you would be safe." Darius's voice grew rough with emotion. "For that act of compassion, her own brother killed her." "Argos," Serena breathed, horror washing through her. Lord Vargos is Ilara's brother. Yes, and when I learned what he had done, I led our forces east and slaughtered his people until the other territories intervened to stop the bloodshed. Darius's eyes had darkened, the gold giving way to a deeper amber tinged with red. I would have killed him too, if I could have reached him. Darius reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew something that gleamed in the torchlight, a crystal vial on a silver chain, identical to the one Serena had seen in the pool's vision. "How did you get that?" she gasped, staring at the vial. Within it, something moved, a ghostly presence that called to her on a level deeper than conscious thought. "Vargos brought it," Darius said, holding the vial out to her. "His gift to the new Northern Queen. He hoped to curry favor, to establish a new alliance now that raiders threaten his borders. Why would he give up something so powerful? Because he believes he can control you through it." Darius's lips curled in disdain. "He doesn't understand that once your wolf is free, no one will control you again." Serena stared at the vial in his outstretched hand. Within it, her wolf, her true self, waited to be released after all these years. The heat in her blood pulsed in time with the shifting shadow within the crystal, as if they recognized each other across the barrier between them. "What happens if I break it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Darius admitted. "No one does. Such a binding has never been maintained for so long, nor broken under a blood moon. The transformation may be intense. It could kill me. Yes. Or I could become the white wolf of the prophecy. Yes. And you would risk that? Risk having a mate more powerful than yourself, one the legends say will unite all packs under her banner." At this, Darius smiled, a real smile that transformed his face, softening the harsh lines into something approaching tenderness. "I would risk anything to see you whole, Serena Vale, to see you become who you were always meant to be." "Why?" she pressed, needing to hear the words. "Because from the moment you entered my throne room, head high despite the whispers and stares, I knew you were stronger than anyone gave you credit for." His voice dropped lower, a rumble that resonated through her bones. "Because in you, I see the queen the North has waited for, the queen I have waited for." The confession hung between them, waited with all that remained unsaid. Serena searched his face, looking for any sign of deception, but found only raw honesty laid bare by the blood moon's magic. Serena took a deep breath, feeling the moment balance on a knife's edge. All her life, she had believed herself broken, incomplete, less than those around her. To discover that she had been whole all along, that her wolf had simply been waiting for her to find it again. She reached out, taking the vial from Darius's hand. The crystal was warm against her palm, pulsing with a life of its own. "What if I'm not the white wolf?" she asked, a final doubt surfacing. "What if I break this and discover I'm just ordinary?" Darius's smile deepened, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Serena Vale," he said, her name like a caress on his lips. "You could never be ordinary." With those words echoing in her heart, Serena closed her fingers around the vial and squeezed. The crystal shattered, cutting into her palm. Blood welled from the wound, mingling with the silvery mist that escaped from the broken vial. For a moment, nothing happened. The mist hung in the air between them, swirling gently in the still air of the cavern. Then it began to move, spiraling towards Serena like a living thing drawn to its home. As the first tendrils of mist touched her skin, pain exploded through her body, white-hot, all-consuming, dropping her to her knees on the stone floor. She heard Darius call her name, felt his arms come around her, but it was distant, unimportant compared to the fire racing through her veins. The world fell away, replaced by sensation, bones shifting, muscles stretching, skin prickling as fur erupted across her body. The transformation that should have been natural from childhood was happening all at once, years of change compressed into moments of agony, and through it all, a presence in her mind, ancient, wild, joyful at its release. Her wolf, no longer separate but merging with her human consciousness, becoming one as they were always meant to be. When the pain finally subsided, Serena found herself on all fours, panting heavily. But the paws beneath her were not the dark gray or brown of a normal wolf. They were white, pure white, gleaming like new snow in the crimson light of the blood moon. She lifted her head, senses overwhelmed by the sudden influx of information, sense she had never detected before, sounds so crisp and clear they seemed to vibrate through her very being. And her vision, sharper, more vivid, with colors she had no names for filling the world around her. Darius stood before her, his expression a mixture of awe and something deeper, more primal. As she watched, his own transformation began, smoother than hers, practiced through years of shifting, but no less breathtaking. Where the king had stood moments before, a massive timber wolf now crouched, its fur a rich copper that matched his human hair, its eyes the same molten gold. He was beautiful, powerful, dangerous, magnificent in his natural form. Serena approached him slowly, her new body moving with a grace she had never possessed as a human. When they stood face to face, she lowered her head slightly, not in submission, but in acknowledgement of what they were to each other. A howl from above broke the moment, distant at first, then joined by others, growing in volume until it echoed through the cavern like a battle cry. Darius's head snapped up, his body tensing beside hers. Through their newfound connection, Serena felt his sudden alarm, his recognition of what that sound meant. Danger, attack, intruders in the castle above. Without hesitation, they raced from the stone circle, up the winding stairs, through corridors that seemed much narrower to their wolf forms. As they ran, Serena felt power building within her, a strength and speed beyond anything she had imagined possible. Her paws barely touched the ground, her white fur a blur of motion as she matched Darius stride for stride. They burst into the throne room to find chaos. Shifters locked in combat, both in human and wolf form. The scent of blood and fear filled the air, along with another smell that made Serena's hackles rise. Eastern wolves, led by the unmistakable scent signature of Vargos himself. In the center of the room, Lysander fought back-to-back with Kira, both in human form, fending off attackers with swords that flashed in the crimson light of the blood moon. Around them, northern wolves battled eastern invaders, their snarls and growls filling the air with a terrible music. Darius didn't hesitate. With a roar that shook the very stones of the castle, he launched himself into the fray, his massive form bowling over two eastern wolves in a single leap. His jaws closed around the throat of one, while his claws raked across the flank of the other. Serena followed, her smaller size allowing her to dart between combatants, her white fur gleaming like a beacon in the chaotic darkness. She fought with instincts she didn't know she possessed, her body moving faster than thought, teeth and claws finding vulnerable points with unerring precision. As she fought, she became aware of a strange phenomenon. Northern shifters, upon seeing her white form, seemed to fight with renewed vigor. Their movements became more coordinated, their attacks more effective, as if her mere presence inspired them beyond their normal capabilities. The prophecy, she realized, the white wolf who would unite the packs under a single banner. It wasn't about conquest or domination. It was about unity, about bringing together the scattered strength of their people against common threats. Across the room she spotted Vargos in his human form, directing his forces from behind a shield wall of eastern warriors. His smoke-colored eyes widened when he saw her, recognition and fear flashing across his face. "The white wolf rises," he shouted, his voice cutting through the din of battle. "Kill her! Kill her now, before she can complete the prophecy." A group of eastern warriors broke from the main battle, charging toward Serena with weapons raised. She crouched, ready to meet their attack, when a copper blur intercepted them. Darius, throwing himself between her and danger without hesitation. But he was outnumbered, even with his alpha strength. A sword slashed across his flank, drawing a yelp of pain that tore at Serena's heart. Another eastern wolf leapt on his back, teeth seeking purchase in the thick ruff of his neck. Rage filled Serena, pure, molten rage, unlike anything she had ever experienced. With it came power, surging through her body like lightning. Her vision tinged red at the edges, matching the bloody light of the moon above. Without conscious thought, she threw back her head and howled. The sound that emerged was not the cry of a single wolf. It was the voice of the pack itself, of every northern shifter who had ever lived and died in these mountains. It resonated through the throne room, through the castle, through the very bones of everyone who heard it, and to her amazement, the northern wolves responded. As one, they disengaged from their individual battles and moved to form a circle around her and Darius. their bodies creating a living wall of fur and fang. Even those in human form seemed compelled to join the formation, moving with the fluid grace of predators, despite their two-legged forms. Vargos stared in disbelief as his carefully planned attack disintegrated before his eyes. His warriors, suddenly facing a unified northern force rather than scattered individual opponents, faltered and began to fall back. "Stand your ground," he shouted, desperation edging his voice. "She's just one wolf. The prophecy cannot be fulfilled tonight." But it was too late. The northern pack moved as one entity now, coordinated by something beyond normal communication, a bond deeper than words, more ancient than language itself. In the center of the circle, Serena felt that bond like a physical presence, connecting her to every northern shifter in the room. She could sense their individual strengths and weaknesses, could direct the flow of battle without a single spoken command. And at her side stood Darius, his golden eyes shining with fierce pride as he watched his mate come into her power. The eastern forces broke, fleeing toward the great doors in a chaotic rush. Only Vargos remained, his face contorted with fury and fear as he watched his plans crumble to dust. "This isn't over," he snarled, backing toward the exit. "The East will never bow to a Southern queen, no matter what color her fur." With those words, he turned and ran, following his retreating forces into the night. The throne room fell silent as the last of the eastern wolves disappeared. For a long moment, no one moved, the northern shifters still caught in the spell of unity that Serena's howl had cast over them. Then, as one, they turned toward her, dozens of faces, human and wolf alike, looking to the white wolf in their midst with expressions of wonder and dawning recognition. Slowly, deliberately, Darius shifted back to his human form. Naked and bleeding from the sword wound on his side, he nevertheless stood tall, his golden eyes never leaving Serena's white form. "My queen," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "My true mate." The words seemed to break whatever remained of the binding spell that had held Serena's wolf captive for so long. The transformation back to human form came easily, naturally, as if she had been shifting all her life. When she stood before him in human form once more, equally bare and vulnerable, Darius closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. His arms came around her, pulling her against his chest with a fierceness that spoke of fear and relief and love finally unleashed. Before the entire court, he tilted her head back, golden eyes meeting hers with an intensity that took her breath away. Then, with a gentleness that belied his strength, he pressed his lips to the curve where her neck met her shoulder. "Mine," he whispered against her skin. "Yours," Serena agreed, the word feeling like a homecoming. His teeth pressed into her flesh, not painfully, but with deliberate pressure. The claiming bite, the mark that would bind them as true mates, body and soul. As his teeth broke skin, a sensation unlike anything Serena had ever experienced washed through her. A wave of connection, of belonging, of rightness that brought tears to her eyes. Through the newly forged bond, she felt Darius's emotions as clearly as her own, his fierce protectiveness, his relief that she had survived her transformation, his pride in her strength, and beneath it all, a love so deep and true, it took her breath away. When he lifted his head, blood stained his lips, her blood, marking him as surely as his bite had marked her. The court around them erupted in cheers, wolves howling their approval, humans clapping and stamping their feet in a thunderous expression of joy. Lady Morrigan stepped forward, a cloak of white fur draped over her arm. She offered it to Serena with a bow deeper than any she had given before. "Queen Serena," she said, her icy eyes now warm with respect. "The white wolf of prophecy." Serena accepted the cloak, wrapping it around her shoulders. The fur felt right against her skin, as if it had been waiting for her all along. As dawn approached, the blood moon began to set, its crimson light fading to the softer glow of early morning. The court dispersed, warriors tending to wounds, servants clearing away the debris of battle. Only Darius and Serena remained in the throne room, sitting side by side on the steps of the dais, their shoulders touching. "What happens now?" Serena asked, her voice soft in the growing light. Darius took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Now we heal, we rebuild, we prepare for what comes next. Vargos will return," she said, not a question but a certainty. "Yes," Darius nodded, With more forces, better prepared, the prophecy frightens him, as it frightens all who cling to the old ways of division and conquest. And we'll be ready for him, Serena said, newfound confidence in her voice. We will. Darius lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Together. Outside, the first rays of true sunlight began to stream through the high windows, casting golden light across the marble floor. A new day dawning, the first of their life as true mates, as partners in both love and leadership. Serena leaned her head against Darius's shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart through their bond. Once, she had believed herself broken, defective, unworthy of love. Now she understood that she had been whole all along, waiting only for the right moment to emerge from her chrysalis, to become the woman, and the wolf, she was always meant to be. I love you, she said, the words simple but profound in their truth. Darius turned to her, his golden eyes bright with an emotion she had once thought him incapable of feeling. And I love you, my white wolf, my queen, my heart. In that moment, as the last of the blood moon's light faded from the sky, Serena knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Not as king and consort, but as true partners, bound by love and respect, and a shared destiny neither of them could have imagined. The fairy tales she had once clung to paled in comparison to the reality she now lived, a reality where monsters became men, where weakness transformed into strength, where love conquered even the deepest darkness. It was not an ending, but a beginning. Their beginning. And it was beautiful. If you enjoyed this story, a like or comment really helps. And if you wish to hear more tales like this one, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next tale.